And I subscribe through all of your campuses to have a Junior Library Guild subscription. And came with it was Deborah. So,
like bonus.
You're a bonus. So she can introduce herself, and she's going to be telling us about, we've got a handout for boys. And hopefully Emily will get here. She's the librarian or IMS that works at our boys' campus. And so I'm just going to take it away and get me to turn the lights off.
It might be easier for them to sleep. Not too many. They're tired. They might go sleep. It's hot out there. So I'm Deborah Ford. This is a little bit about me. My life is very different now from all of that because a year and a half ago I went to the CEO of Junior Library Guild and said, you know, I like Junior Library Guild, but there's some things that you don't have that I could bring to the table. So, because at that point, I had been the district librarian in San Diego Unified for 11 years. I had 180 schools, and it was pretty much a sinking ship, and it was making me old fast. And my parents, I worried, you know, they might go on to Jesus without me. So I thought, I got to get a job that's going to have some stability. It's time for me to spread my wings and just be full-time consultant. And then Randy went back to Columbus, Ohio, where he said, you know what, I think that's a job. We're going to call it Director of Library Outreach. So that's me. So now I'm the Director of Library Outreach at Junior Library Guild, which is very interesting when you consider the fact that I used to be anti-JLG. I was like, those people would call me and I would say, I'm sorry, I have a class right now. I don't have any money. You know, same thing y'all said. And I'd hang up the phone and I'd say, don't they know who I am? I am Deborah B. Ford. People all over America are waiting for me to tell them what to read. You know, I can keep it myself. Thank you very much. I don't need their help. And then one day I went over to one of my schools and this girl had all these hot off the press brand new books. I knew about those books, but I hadn't told her yet. And I said, Connie, where do these books come from? How do you know about these books? She hung her head low and she said, they're Junior Library Guild. I know you hate them, but they're just going to give me the same thing you're going to tell me about. Now nobody can take my money. I went, you know what? You're exactly right. Because in San Diego, we were really quick for somebody to say, here's some money, but you got to spend it by tomorrow. And then tomorrow comes and they say, you know what? I got to take that. Never, ever did that happen to me again. We just bought JLG, and then, of course, as part of the benefits of that, you get the backlist. How many of you've got your one level already? Everybody's got your one level? Anybody tried the backlist yet? Do you know what that is? Personally, I think it's a goofy name. It means the books that are older than 3 months. That's what that means. So after 3 months, they go to the backlist. So if you look at your little disc folder that they made you, there's a catalog in there that says backlist, but we just had a warehouse sale. If you lived near JLG, you could drive your little car over there, come to the warehouse, and get the books off the shelf for $5. We have a 2-day sale. We have people from Kentucky and Tennessee. They come up for the weekend. And they go shopping, they take in an event, and then they go to the JLG warehouse and buy a bunch of $5 books. So, but that catalog is online. So I want to make sure you take advantage of that backlist. When you got a little bit of money and you want to spend it right away, that's a great way to make your books go a little bit fast. And the same books, they're just the levels that you didn't get. This is your sales rep, Deb Goebel. Sweetest thing in the world. She is just absolutely one of my favorite people. You couldn't have a much better rep. You know, she will bend over backwards to help you. Trade. You need to trade a title out, or you want to add levels, you want to switch your level, or you just have questions about how does this whole thing work. You call Deb, you send her an email. She's really, really sweet and precious girl. Actually, her whole family is both her brother and her sister work there too. All just as sweet as any of those people. But today we're going to talk about books for boys, which is my specialty that you saw as a published author, and that's what my book is. It's called Scary, Gross, and Enlightening Books for Boys. And I'm actually now working on I'm not even going to say it's a sequel. It's almost a complete redo because when I wrote the book, it was pre 2.0. So there are so many things now that we can do with boys that involve technology that will hook them like that. And so many great new books. So I'm writing over a whole new thing. But let's talk about the research that goes behind what I'm going to talk to you about today. If I was going to ask you, what do you like to read, where do you like to read, and what do you like to write? Turn to your neighbor. What would you say? I'll give you a second to answer those questions. Was it busy? I heard somebody say, anything I can get my hands on. That's a good answer, what I like to read in hands on. You could do my job, because I have to read pre-K to 12 now. All the genres, everything. Luckily, I like to read everything, so that's good. My mother tells people I write book reports for a living, which is kind of true, because I write a column for SLJ every Tuesday. If you get the Extra Helping newsletter, I have a column called Book Talks to Go, which I'll tell you about in just a few minutes. But I heard somebody also say I like to read laying down. But I bet nobody said I like to read what they tell me, sitting at my table with my feet on the floor. And I love to write. I love to write 500-word essays. That's my favorite thing. I love that. I bet nobody said that. But that's what we do to our kids. And we tend to do it to boys in a place where they're not even developmentally ready to do those things. And then we're going to give them a test. And you better do good, because you're going to get the same test as everybody else, because we've got to be fair. But they're just not ready yet. It's not that they can't. But lots of studies have shown that boys are more likely than girls to repeat a grade. And you probably have seen that yourself. Girls score higher on writing tests. It's not that boys can't. It's when we test them in 4th grade that it shows up. And boys are more likely than girls, 33% more, to drop out of school. And all these were published in a study by Smith and Wellham in 2002. But at that time, what they found was that boys also read less often. And before that, there was this stigma about reading. You know, boys are supposed to go outside and play and do sports, and all those kinds of things. But thank goodness along came J.K. Rowling, and now you're some weirdo if you have. What do you mean you haven't read the Harry Potter books? I said that to an adult man not too long ago. Everybody's read that. Everybody's read Hunger Games. It's what you do. Even those. How many of you work in elementary? And you got your little babies. They want to read those books, right? And you say, oh, I don't know if you really want to read that. But we don't have that stigma as much as we used to. There's another study that came out in 2005 that addressed especially boys of color. And what they found was, in addition to these other things, they're facing stereotypes. We don't expect them to do well, so they don't. We expect them to have trouble, so they do. We don't look to fix those things. Lots of these kids live in a high-risk neighborhood, or they have a low socioeconomic background. I myself worked in a school. My mother was worried to death, but I said, Mom, it's a calling. I'm going to go and work at this school. It was 100% free lunch. They've seen things in their houses you couldn't put on cable TV. I mean, really scary things. They're not thinking about doing well on tests and doing their homework. They're trying to where's my next meal coming from? Is my mom coming home? Is somebody going to kill me when I walk in my house? You know, they have a lot of burdens that we can't do anything about. So we want to focus on what we can do something about. Lots of times, these same schools are the ones that have the brand new teachers. And that's a good thing, bad thing, I think, because at that point, I was kind of an inexperienced teacher. I was an inexperienced librarian for sure, because it was my first elementary library. I had no idea what to do. And I went in there in kindergarten, I read Amelia Dillon. It was one of my greatest flops. Wow. They looked at me like that's the dumbest thing I ever heard. Why would she cut holes in the towels? Why would she put the light bulbs outside on what's that thing she's putting them on? And so I didn't have the experience, but lots of times those people are the ones who don't, they can get past the stereotypes. They love their kids enough to meet their needs in the other kinds of ways, but they don't know as many teaching techniques that maybe as an experienced teacher. And lots of times those are little white girls teaching at those schools. And those are schools, and they're in schools where kids are a color or their English is a second language. And so they have another barrier to go across. So Fashola says we got some trouble, But if we know what the problems are, it's going to be a lot easier for us to solve those problems. So what do? One of the things that we do is we get the boys involved, because studies have shown that the more boys are involved in their learning, the more likely they are to learn. They also do well with partner and group work. Instead of just, I'm on my own and I'm struggling all by myself, I got Susan over here who helps balance me out. She doesn't do all my work, but she helps me think through things that my brain doesn't do yet. And when you think about it in the real world, there are very few things you do by yourself. I mean, even me. I mean, I'm the only one in my department. But I'm constantly working with the marketing people and the sales people and the people in New York because we're a team, and that's kind of how you do things. So it works for them too. And we also need to bring in the men. I should take a picture. You guys have more men in 39 schools than most places where I go to. But so many of these kids are living in a home where there are no men. They are the men. And so we want to bring in men. We're going to talk about ways you can bring men into your classrooms and your libraries. We want to challenge the boys. We want to look past any stereotypes or any background problems that they have and challenge our boys and expect them to do well. Expect them to do like anybody else. And then sometimes we need to rethink our teaching strategy. So we're going to look at, especially 2.0 ways, some technology ways that we can get our boys more involved, do some group work, and let them be more hands-on, which will help them learn a little bit better. And last but not least, we're going to offer them lots of different things. And I think one thing, we're going to mostly talk about books today, but I have tried for years and years and years to try to turn the thinking that reading is not just reading a big fat novel. I did a talk about books and boys in Alaska a few years ago, and a reporter came in with his photographer, and I asked the photographer, so what do you read? And he said, oh, I don't read. I said, honey, you work for a newspaper. You have to at least say I read the newspaper. He said, oh, right, yeah, I read the newspaper, but that's not really reading. I said, yes, who said that? You have to look at words, put them together, decide what that means. That's reading. We read all day long. Now with Common Core, 70%, by the time we get to 12th grade, 70% of what we read should be informational text. In your real life, that's how much you read, unless you have my job. And then you read a lot of fiction. Or you read, or if you're in the editorial department, you probably read more than 30% fiction. Now, we want to give them an opportunity to choose from things, and even things that aren't, the fiction book, outside that. So you as the library staff, the media specialists, you have an opportunity to help teach your teachers so that the teachers can go back and do that with their kids. Banning the 100-page biography report, et cetera, et cetera. They don't come that way. I've given you lots of resources, which you'll see in your handout. The first one you're going to see is, I think, it's on page 2. You see it says bit.ly/boys. This is a website I made just for books for boys. And so on that website, you'll see authors who writes books that boys will like. There are links for kids, things that boys might want to do, resources for teachers, lesson plans, links to publishers. So that's a site that you might want to go back and look at when you get a chance. So let's jump right in there. We're going to kind of blend the strategies along with the book talks. I'm going to give, I look back at the list, and this kind of is a short version. And some of these books, these are all 2013, and I'm thinking, holy cow, that was just last year. Feels like that was forever ago. So if we have time, there's a catalog in your packet. I'll walk you through some of the new books for boys that are out for 2014 and tell you a little bit about them if we have time. So it is a K-12 list. We're the middle school people, okay, and the high school people. Okay. Do we have any K-8 or K-12 schools? No? Barclay Baseball is actually a picture book for older readers. It might say, does it say K-3 on your paper? Or does it say 3 to 6? It says 3 to 6. So, it doesn't mean that you can't use it with 7 and 8 or with 9 through 12. Because one of the things that I've learned as a teacher is that sometimes prior knowledge or not having prior knowledge, when you give them something new, just goes right over the top of their heads. And barbed wire baseball is certainly one of those. It's about Japanese internment camps in Arizona and about a man who played, a Japanese-American man who played baseball before the war, and then he and his family were scooped up and sent to this internment camp where he decided, we're just gonna play baseball here. We're gonna build us a field, and the word got out, and a real baseball team came to play them, and they were all like, we're gonna really just bust them good. The professional team lost. I loved it. Not too terribly long ago, they actually got back together, these Japanese Americans that were interned and those professional baseball players. Lots of great links online when you look this book up. Now, one thing I mentioned earlier was the book, the backlist. If you were looking at Junior Library right now, one of the things that we've done is Jeanette has put the Books for Boys list on here, on the website. So if you were sitting somewhere and you were making a list of what you want to get and add to your collection, she's already done that. So all you have to do is log into your account, and then you go to Awards and List, and you look at Themed List, and you'll see pre-K to 6 and 7 to 8. So like summer reading, fall and spring, and then here's Books for Boys. So you could just scroll through the books that I'm going to talk about, and you'll see some of them are out of stock already. But some of them, like I just wrote about that book not too long ago, are down to $9, $5, etc., etc. So you can just click and put those in your basket or put them in your wish list, and you're ready to go. Bat's Biggest List by Sandra Markle, great science writer. This is great for your K-3 story times. I'm working on a workshop for public librarians and what they need to know about Common Core. And I'll tell you the same thing I'm going to tell them, is try to get more nonfiction into your story time. When you're reading with your kids, they love nonfiction. You know, that's your worst, that's the section where they're gone the most, where you know exactly where that book lives. Because you put it back 500 times. You know, it's the bottom book on the right-hand side, it's next to a blue book that's torn on top, Bats is going to be one of those kind of books. This little bat on the cover, its tongue is so long compared to everything else that it rolls up into a little coil. It's attached to its rib cage. And it just kind of rests there up against its rib cage until it spits up and out. I know. You tell that, you won't ever have to shelve that book again. Battle Bunny. Now, when this book came across my desk, I went, oh. My brain suddenly went into two places. First, the me part said, oh, this looks awesome. And the practical me said, oh, there are going to be some librarians who will hate this book. But this book works really great in upper grades. Little kids don't quite get the humor of what happened here. So what happens is a little boy named Alex, his grandma gives him a golden book for his birthday, The Birthday Bunny. Really? Is that a book a 10-year-old boy wants? I don't think so. And so Alex decides, well, I'll just redo the book. And so in pencil, he writes all over the whole thing, calls it Battle Bunny, and he's going around chopping down trees and blowing things up and fighting the president. It's hilarious. It's John Sheska and Matt Barnett, who, if you ever get to hear them talk, go in here. Hilarious. But you can go online, you can see the original book, so if you want to read it to them. So it's kind of it can give you two lessons, actually, because you could read it the new way and read it the original way. But that's certainly a place to get the boys involved. Speaking of getting them involved, let's talk about technology and games and your lesson plans. Excuse me. The first thing that you do with your kids is orientation. Now, I know we're at the end of the year, but this is a great time for you to start planning for next year. But it's usually the first thing we do, and it's the most boring thing we do. We stand at the front and yak, 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 yak. So what can we do to get our kids involved in that orientation, no matter what grade level they are, and to make it more interesting? There are several things we can do. Towards the end of your handout, there's a place where it says 2.0. Page 9. We're going to kind of pull from some of those ideas. But one thing you could do is just have kids vote online. If every kid has a device, then you set up a Survey Monkey or something like that, and you ask them those questions. And click, click, click. They're doing they're responding. I heard somebody say Active Inspire, so you must have smart boards. So you can do, if you've got those counters that go with them, you could do something where they get up and they move, or they sit at their seat and they use their counter. But there are lots of ways you can get them involved like that. A Voki is another way. Anybody used a Voki before? Several? Oh, good. Good. We'll look at Vokies in just a second. Interactive Blackboard, I mentioned. QR codes. QR codes are also great for using at an open house. There's a QR code on page 2 of your handout. When you scan that, it takes you to this website. Right? It's still there? Yeah. I saw a school doing this during in the library during open house, and she had put QR codes about all kinds of things that led to different places on her website, like the rules and procedures. One went to databases. One went to like a scrapbook of pictures so that the parents could see what was going on. So there's lots of ways you can use a QR code. Or maybe you can make a movie, and I'll show you a couple of examples of that. So here's one that we did when I was working in San Diego, and this was just taking a PowerPoint and bumping it up a notch. And she took her son's Lego guys and put them all over the library to talk about the rules. So the Lego guys ask before printing, and the Lego students bring their ID to check out, et cetera, et cetera. Well, then we got tired of doing that, and we thought, what if we made a movie? And so we made a movie. One of the elementary schools did do's and don'ts, and she let her 4th graders do it. And so they all know what the rules are. It's just a review. You feel like you need to do it. So she divided the kids up into teams, gave them each a rule or procedure, and they had to act out how do you do it or how do you not do it. And it was the most hilarious thing I ever saw, because there's this whole place where they're supposed to be taking care of library materials. And so what are they doing? They're arguing over a book. I'm waiting for that book to just come into 2 parts. And then it cuts back to them, and they're, oh, no, you take the book first. I'll wait. Oh, no, you take the book first. I'll wait. And it just goes on like that for like 30 seconds. It was hilarious. But it got them up, it got them involved, they got to thinking. Another thing you can do is play the PowerPoint games. Are you smarter than a 5th grader? And if this were active, it's kind of hard to see in here, but if I clicked on the 5th grade topic, I would get the topic question, which online database is primarily focused on geography. Anybody know? Starts with a C. Culture grants. Who said that first? Where? I bring you a sticker. See, that's another thing that you can do. You want some little tiny prize that you can give away as you're doing stuff like that. Suddenly people are now paying attention. Because what will she ask me next? And I might get stickers. I'm sad that I don't have Texas stickers, because at the conference we had Texas Librarians Rock stickers. But they're gone. They were very cool. And so here's the cultograms, and if I were to, this were live, it would take me back to that big board, and it would go away. Another thing that I'm doing as part of my outreach job is I made a Pinterest account. How many of you use Pinterest for work? A fair amount, okay, good. So Pinterest is not only a social network where girls can plan weddings that they'll never have, houses they'll never live in, and vacations they'll never take. It's also, I have found, a great place to get educational ideas. And one of my favorite places to find out bulletin board or displays for windows, if you've got one of those, I call them book prison. It's a great place to find out what people are doing in their libraries for those things. Let me show you a few things that I have on Pinterest, books for boys. So these are books and activities for boys. This is, for example, Timmy Failure. This is a summer reading log that features Timmy Failure. Here are some books that you might share, mostly new ones. Coin tricks. I was looking for magic tricks not too long ago. Good games. Oh, this one. This one is so fun. I mentioned games earlier. We don't have time, but if this were a longer workshop, we would be doing this. So we'd be doing this. It's a rip of a week, and we would be up, and we would be kung fu fighting. Oh, skip the ad. I don't want to see the ad.
I have the ball.
Oh, skip the ad.
Everybody was kung fu fighting. Those cats were fast as lightning.
So it's a fun thing to do, but it uses your technology that you already have. You tie it into something that you're doing with a unit maybe. So there are all kinds of things like this. This is frugal fun for boys. Lots and lots of things. Some a little further down. Oh, there's Battle Buddy. Oh, good, the whole thing. A little further down, there is a Battle Buddy. Oh, look, this I found. Walking Dead treats. Ew, it's perfect. Perfect, perfect, perfect. Okay, so this is the Battle Bunny website where you can see how to make your own book. So here's what it originally looked like, and here's the edits. So here's your book, and here's where you can change it. So this is great. I mean, you've got a whiteboard. This is a fun thing to do. So look through that Books for Boys Pinterest board. I think you'll find some fun ways to get your kids involved. Another way to get them involved is to make sure they can see. And also to hear. Lots of times the classroom will have all this set up, and even like a lavalier microphone that they could use, but we don't want to use it. But I promise you, there are people in the room that will learn better because your voice is magnified, right? Or if you have a document camera, so that when you're reading a picture book or you're showing some primary source document or something like that, then lay it right there so that everybody can see what it is that you're looking at. Here's another series. This is the scientific scandals. We see lots of scientific scandals on TV and those shows that we watch, you know, stuff that are going on. But this is real history. This is the Battle of the Dinosaur Bones, where different scientists actually fake data because they want to be the first to find the T-Rex. So it's the whole struggle to be first. And the documentation that we've now found to be quite correct. Becoming Babe Ruth. When I think of Babe Ruth, well, what do you think of when you think of Babe Ruth? Baseball. And then what? Who? Oh, the candy bar. Okay. Anything else? Yankees. Home run. Yeah, call him a shot.
The curse.
Oh, who said that? Yeah, he was a party boy. He was a party boy, and so when I got Matt's book and I read that, I was stunned. It's a picture book biography about a little slice of Babe life I didn't know anything about. His father just got done with him. I'm done with you, I can't do this anymore. And he took him to this boys' home that's where he learned baseball. The monks taught him how to play baseball. Then years later, he's this successful baseball player, and the home where he grew up burned down. He started fundraising during his baseball games. And some of the proceeds went to funding to rebuild this boys' home. And then he brought the boys to come see the ball game. I thought, who knew he had that sort of, kindred spirit taking care of ourselves kind of thing. Another thing I like to share with kids is that authors are people too. So anytime I can bring them into a classroom or a library, I want to do that. So here's a picture of Matt at the JLD booth with his book. Authors are really funny. When we're at a conference and they're there, they come to the booth to pet their books. And they look around, where's my book, where's my book? And then they want to pet it. And they're very sad if for some reason, we don't have one. But there are lots of ways you can bring them in. One way is by going to their website, like, for example, Dan Gutman. I love to share with kids that on Dan's website, he has his rejection letters. The baseball card series, there was like 50 rejections for that series. Everything from, who is ever going to buy that? Hello, all of us. He's still writing those things. Teachingbooks.net, y'all have that? It's a perfect way. I mean, that's why Nick did that. He wanted to bring authors and illustrators into homes where kids can't see them. Then, rides on. 2013 was a big year for bully books, and this is one about a boy who's being bullied, and his brand new bicycle was stolen by this bully, and then the next thing you know, the bully is hanging off a cliff by a root, just like you see in the cartoons or something, and suddenly Ben is like, karma. Part of him wants to let the boy fall, and part of him thinks, oh, it's not the right thing to do. What will he do? You'll have to read the book. Black Ice. This is a Sherlock Holmes series. It's the first series endorsed by the Sir Arthur Conan Doyle estate. The others, not so much. This is actually part of a series. And while I mentioned in series, at JLG, because people are constantly jumping into the stream, whatever you get in your level might be a series book and you don't have the rest of them. Because they send you an email ahead of time and you know what you're going to get, you could change that out if you didn't want that series. Or you could jump into the backlist and look and see if the ones in front of that are there. Sometimes, most of the time, you don't necessarily have to read one book in a series to get the rest of them. But I know you have kids who like it in order, regardless. Been there, done that. The Black Rabbit, a great little picture book story about fear. This poor little rabbit's got this big black rabbit following him. He doesn't know what to do about it until this big bully comes along and the black rabbit saves the day. Bluebird. This is a wordless book, and sometimes teachers and librarians don't know what to do with wordless books. They're scary to us, but they really are perfect for Common Core because they do require kids to use higher level thinking. They have to put their thoughts down in words. Great discussion can come out. This is another bullying book about a city boy who has no friends. He gets picked on, but he meets this bluebird and becomes friends with him. Until one day these mean boys are throwing rocks. It's also a tissue book, so don't read it in kindergarten, because you probably need your tissues as much as your children. It's very much like the fantastic flying books of Morris. What's Morris's name? You know which one I'm talking about? It's very kind of surreal like that too. It's a great story. Last year there was a book, a graphic novel series for YA that came out by Jean Lun Yang, who is just precious, but it has two parts, Boxers and Saints, and they're both on your list. They're big, long, historical novel graphic novels. So if you're middle school or high school, you might want those. Brotherhood. There are very few books about reconstruction, and this is one of them. And it's a story about a boy who gets in a hard place. He lives in Virginia, and his brother's in the Ku Klux Klan. And he just wants his brother to like him. And so one night he follows his brother, not knowing what he's gotten himself into. And the next thing you know, he's forced to join the KKK, and he's terrified. He's worried that they'll do something to him if he tries to get out, but he's also terrified of the stuff that they're trying to do because his best friend is a little black lady, young black girl, who's teaching the freed slaves how to read and write. Well, he also doesn't know how to read and write. She's teaching him as well. So he is really between a rock and a hard place, between what his head says to do and what his heart says to do. It was hurt your heart to read it, but it was really, really powerful book. Another website for you to use is this bit.ly/web resources for teachers. Let me jump in there because one of the things I want to show you is a resource for teaching something like brotherhood. So when we go to this website, you'll see content and collaboration and global education and time and money sailors. We're going to come down a little bit to where did I put it? Oh, here we go. We're going to go down to time and money savers because that's what it does. It will save you time and money. And we're going to go to JLG's Book Talks to Go, Live Binder. Has anybody used a live binder before? A few people? Good. I started using one because one of the things that I do for JLG is I write these book reports that my mom talks about. And so then they decided that, that's what I wrote today. So then they said, I said, what if I wrote book talks instead of book reviews? I mean, it's JLG book. Why would I write that it's a good book? It wouldn't be a JLG book if it weren't, right? What does a librarian need? I said, we could use a book talk because we don't have time to read everything. And once we do that, then we might want something that we could either use for story time or use to teach it or give to our teachers. So what I started doing was I wrote this short little book talk about 4 or 5 books a week. And then the second paragraph for each book are I write about what I have found to teach that book with. So there might be lesson plans, there might be the author's website, the illustrator's website, the publisher's website. Sometimes I find something that's content related, and I put links to that as well. So I'm writing that all in this column, and I said, you know what? What happens when the column is gone and the newsletter's gone? I need a place to put that. So enter Live Binder. So in the Live Binder, all that you see on the left-hand side, these are all books that I've read and written up. And the color code, they're color-coded by grade level. Turquoise is just informational stuff about JLG. The purple is elementary, orange is middle, and steel blue is high school. So let's go back and look at Brotherhood. Book's orange, it's a middle school book. Here's the book talk to go. Here's the link to where it is at JLG, which I should tell you, if you have trouble with, not trouble, but if you worry about sensitivity issues with your kids, getting your hand slapped because a book has language or sex or something like that, if you're logged into your JLG account, you can see where it says sensitive areas. And if there's a sensitive area in the book, it'll be there. If for some reason, yeah, we're the only people that do that. I just said thank you. I didn't know I would need that in California. I mean, you can wear whatever you want to and do whatever you want to in California, but you better be real careful about what books you're putting in the library. Who knew? So I was really grateful for that. But you have to be logged in order to see it. If for some reason you get a book and you find a sensitive issue that's not there, send me personally an email and I'll see what's going on. It could be it just didn't get put in there yet. It could be it just slipped. But you can save everybody else. But after Brotherhood, you see here's a link to the author. So the author's website there, which your district won't let us see his website. A discussion guide, you won't let us see that either. That's a really weird thing. You guys are on your own. I don't know what to tell you.
We can get those unlocked.
You probably, yeah. All right, so look at this. I love this. First of all, This is a blend space, and it's a collaborative online tool. So if you're into that kind of thing, it might be something that you want to check out. But what they put here is everything that they use, the teachers, the librarians, and the kids to teach this book. Those are all their resources, including the project that they use to do it, which I thought was really cool. And as I find them, this might be vlog. There's a YouTube video. I wonder if it's on the JLD. Nope, blocked in there too. Another thing that we're doing on the website is that when Jeanette finds that there's a book trailer or things like that, she adds it to a tab called Additional Media. And then when I make a book talk to go, she puts a link directly to that too. So if you just are bumping around in JLG, you'll find it. So anyway, that's how I'm using that binder. But normally, it would be a great place for you to go and get lesson plans and book trailers and things like that. The bully book. A book for middle school, for elementary maybe, about a boy who suddenly becomes bullied. He's never had any trouble, and all of a sudden it's like they just chose him randomly, which is exactly what happened. Because he finds a page from the bully book, and it tells exactly how to identify and attack the who you want to bully. And it turns out that this bully book has been around for years and years and years. And it's up to this kid, he's like, we're done with this. We're not doing this anymore. And he tries to find out who wrote it and find the rest of the book and stop the whole thing. Crash and Burn, another YA book about a boy who, two boys that are best friends, and one of them really goes off the deep end and tries to burn down the school. And so it's how his friend tries to go back and look at, could I have seen the signs, could I have done something differently, etc. Darius and Twig. This is a book about two boys who live in Brooklyn, and both of them want out. This book is a perfect example of that whole stereotype. Here's two boys who they want to do better. One's a runner, one's a writer. They want out of their neighborhood. But the people that are in the neighborhood are like, what, you think you're better than us? And one of them, the runner, his uncle wants him, you should stay here and be part of this family and do this store, and why are you abandoning us? And the other boy, Darius, he's the writer, he's the man of the house, and he's trying to take care of his little sister because his mom's working 2 jobs to try to make ends meet. So it's got all those social issues and financial issues kind of built in. It's how they deal with it. And it is Walter B. Myers. The Dark. Great read aloud. Those of you that work with middle school and high school, you might get some of these picture books that once they get on $5 especially, and put them someplace where your kids got, they got time to read. I hate they miss these breakthrough picture books because they are old, because the kids are old. Hilarious story of a boy who's afraid of the dark stays out of his room until one day, it does not, comes right on in. Diary of a Worm is now in an I Can Read series as a level 1, and this is a story of how he wants to be the teacher's pet. He's trying to find a perfect gift for his teacher. Inviting men in is another way to get boys more involved in reading, and how can you do that? You can invite men in to be readers in your classroom or in your library. Talk to your coaches. Sometimes a coach might come down to the library and they're looking for a video because it's raining or snowing or something. Offer them a book or an audio book or a book on tape or a movie that is a book instead. Give them a few ideas. When you choose audiobooks, choose audiobooks that have a male reader so that they can hear a guy read it. And the same thing with video. Lots of books that are now on tape where you can see the video bring the men in. Or maybe you could do something special in the library. This was a parent-child book club, and we had read $1 Million Putt. So one of our parents worked at a golf course, and he set up a miniature putting course in the library, and we paired them up. And so one was blindfolded because in $1 Million Putt's about a little boy's going to win a putting competition, but he's blind. And so in this, each pair had a blindfolded person. The interesting outcome of this was that the pair that won, the girl that was blind, the girl that won was actually blind. It was her idea to even do the whole thing. And she beat everybody that was blindfolded. Maybe you can take pictures of some of your staff with things that they like to read and make a read poster. These are the custodians on the left and the science teacher with his new little boy on the right. Graphic novels often sell themselves, and the Donner Party really takes it up a notch. If they know anything about this story, this is a story where they're trying to get to California and they ran out of food, so they ate each other. It's hilarious, which is a little ironic considering the content of the story, but it's Nathan Hale, and he's hilarious already, a little bit irreverent in his humor, and he takes a few liberties with historical facts, but he clears them up at the end. This is a series, and it's great for connecting with your social studies classes, and he's kind of all over the map as far as era goes. And there's a new one coming out in spring. I saw it in the wall. Kids, of course, like to draw their own comics, and this one is 10 secrets to drawing your own. So this will give those boys some tips. L. Ray Jakes, a new series for second, third grade boys that are just learning to read on their own. Strong little African-American boy character. And the Dragon Slayer is the most recent of the two. And it's another bullying story where he is trying to take care of his little kindergarten sister who's being bullied at kindergarten. Some mean little girl took her pink jacket. And first of all, he's, I'm the big brother and you give it back now. And he thought, oh, wait, that's kind of like being a bully. I got to find another way to do the same thing. And so I think it'll give kids some good ideas too. Eruption. This is part of the Scientists in the Field series. Great books for showing kids that if you like science, whether you like to blow stuff up or look for stuff that washes up on the ocean, or you like animals, there are all kinds of things you can do with science without working in a lab, wearing a lab coat. These guys go into what might be an active volcano, and they literally put stuff in the volcano and read the signs and try to guess when it's going to erupt. And so far they've been very lucky. They've actually saved whole villages by reading the signs and knowing that it's getting ready to blow and gotten people evacuated. Fearless, Cornelia Funke. This is the second book in the Mirror World series, and in this story, this boy has not got not much time left because those moths are taking over his heart. Pretty soon it's going to be black, and he is not going to make it. There's also a little bit of love interest for the girls that like this series. He starts to have little feelings for the fox all of a sudden. Another thing we can do is rethink our strategies to get them in the library and let them be comfortable when they get here. Especially at middle and high school, they don't necessarily have to come to the library. So we might want to think about marketing our spaces. Think about the big bad chain stores. They're not closing. They're adding people. Every time I go, there's an ad saying help wanted. They've got constantly adding people to what they're doing. Look at this library. When you see this, what do you see? What's your first thought?
Empty shelves.
Empty shelves. Now look at it again. Can you tell why they're like that?
Because all the kids are probably little.
Because all the kids are little. They're picture books. And she put all the picture books at eye level for them to get them. But when you walk in the door, it looks like, wow, they have nothing. So what we did was we moved those books to shorter shelves, and we put the nonfiction on this wall. And now it looks like, hello, they have no books. They have lots of books. And we just use the top shelf for display. And so it makes a different presentation when you walk in the door. I saw this at a bookstore. They took a series that you have lots of titles in, and they just turned it up. It's still in its regular Dewey order. They didn't pull it out. And then there's a little write-up about what the Alex Rider series is. And it just shakes stuff up, and takes less space too. Here is a public library in Florida. If you have older kids and you have older kids and younger kids and you want to do something special for your upper grades, then you could do maybe a teeny little corner just for them, which is what happened in this library. And in the back, I don't know if you can see it, but they have like booth, like restaurant booth. And I thought it must be brand new because this place looked immaculate. And she said, oh no, it's 3 years old. She said, come back tonight and you'll see. So I came back tonight, packed, all boys. There was one girl in the library. She was way far away from them. Boys had completely taken over that area, doing homework, playing games on the computer. She said, it's like that every night. And I said, it's in really good shape too. And she said, I know, because they helped pick it out, and they know it's for them, so they take care of it. Here in this middle school library, we put all kinds of weird things in the library just to get the kids in there, because they were trying to get rid of this stigma that the library was a mean, horrible place and people were never going to yell at you. So she put these little figures in there, and kids will come in and just pose those things. And the next thing you know, she's having a conversation. I met a lady this school year. She has a tray of lotion. And kids will come to the library to put lotion in there. She said it has absolutely nothing to do with what we do in the library, but she said, I can't tell you the number of kids that are now readers and come in here and they do their work because I have lotion. Here boys are playing games. They're playing that tic-tac-toe. We have lots of little board games like that. They come in at lunch, and once they're in, they feel comfortable, then it's more likely that we can say, hey, we have this book, we have that book, we have this resource, that resource. The Cracker Barrel rug, we have caught more children in San Diego with the Cracker Barrel rug than anything. That's why those people let me go out on the road, because I would bring one back. It would be a door prize. Yeah, we have one. We had a kid who came in and watched kids playing, and he said, what you need is a tournament. I could set up the bracket. This kid had never been in the library before. I mean, if he was at school, he was in the office, or he was in ISS. But he came in, and he set it up, and, it makes a difference sometimes. Frog Song, beautiful picture book, looks like a coffee table kind of book, but it's got so many gross things in there. Your boys will love it. There's a story about a frog who takes the babies and he eats them, and they just kind of sit in his gullet until they're full tadpoles, and then he burps them out. There's another daddy frog who has the eggs on his back, and they hatch on his back and swim away. There are 3 hilarious books for boys last year, and this is absolutely one of them. From Norvell to Nowhere. If you haven't read the first one, read the first one. What was the first one? Head End in Norvell. It was a Newbery. And it was one of those sleeper Newberries. It came out at the end of the year, and everybody went, what? And literally, I didn't read it till this one came in. When this one came in, I thought, okay, fine, I'm going to read that first book. So I did, and then I read this one. I'm laughing so hard I could hardly stand it. It was so, I was in a restaurant. I was embarrassed. I had to push it. And it's a story about a boy who lives next door to this, what we think is kind of a crazy old lady, and she's a huge Eleanor Roosevelt fan. And in this story, Eleanor Roosevelt has just died, and she's going to pay her respects. But in the meantime, her sister dies in Florida. And on top of that, this man who's for sure in love with her, but has killed all the old ladies in their town because she won't marry him until she's the only one left. And so that harpoon is for him. Yeah, it's hilarious. Hilarious. Maybe your boys like to fish. Finding a book about things they like. We just passed National Poetry Month, though we shouldn't just save it for April. But this is a novel in verse about a boy whose sister fishes better than he does. And it's a story about how she helps him learn to be a better fisherman. The Haunting of Gabriel Ash, I could only read in the daytime because it was scary. So if your boys like scary, first of all, it's Dan Pavlaki, and everything he writes is scary. So just add him to your list. This is a story of a boy whose house burns down, so they move to grandma's house. And she's just an odd bird already. She writes these graphic horror things. You know, his grandma writes that, you know. But at the same time, this haunting thing shows up in this town, and of course they blame the boy who kind of is an outcast, and maybe it's not him. Maybe there is something supernatural going on. Gordon Foreman. And here's the thing about knowing if it's going to be good or not. So we see Gordon Foreman, and you see his name is almost as big as the title. You know, if I were English as a second language, I might not be sure which is the first and last name, right? So that just means, hello, you just know who that is. And this is the first in a series called The Hypnotist, about a boy who has these special powers. He can read minds and cause things to happen because, and he's caught up for a test so they can see how powerful he is. But it turns out the people who are testing him are the bad guys. Matt De La Pena, a YA book with an Hispanic teenage boy in the story. There's a hurricane, a tsunami thing, and he gets caught up in it. One of maybe 2 books last year that have a character, Hispanic American character, especially for that age group. Now, Timmy Failure. I did this not too long ago. There was a boy sitting in the room, and that's what he had on his desk. So let's look at the marketing on that. Timmy Failure is a winner. Jeff Kinney, Diary of a Wimpy Kid. So there you go. If Jeff says it's good, probably it's good. And the second book is out. That came out maybe last month. But the first sentence of this book is, it's a lot harder to drive a polar bear through a living room than you think it is. I was not going to finish that, right? You know. Timmy Failure is a detective, and his partner is a polar bear, but he's not very good at his detective work, and so the clues are right under his nose, and he continues to miss them. More Than This, Patrick Ness, who writes very kind of oddball sort of things. This is another one of those odd worlds where a boy wakes up and he's pretty sure he was dead. So how is it that now I'm awake? And I don't know what happened to get me to where I am now. The Nazi Hunters. We cannot have enough books about World War II and the Nazis. I don't know, something happens in 4th grade and the switch comes on, and it just stays on, I think. But this is about the capture of one of the most notorious criminals during that whole war, and documented very well. And it's one of those books where if you're reading at a computer, you can't help but jump on to see if that's right. It's one of those kind of books. It is in the light binder, so if you go to the Nazi Hunters, you'll see all kinds. Let's just see what stuff is blocked. Here it is. So we go down to Nazi Hunters, and these books are all in alphabetical order by title. So here's Neil's website. Yeah, there it is. And he's got a blog. He's got a few other things. You might look at that. There's an interview. There's photographs. So some of the photographs that he used in the story, I bookmarked here. This is the trial. Links to the Holocaust Museum, Holocaust lesson plans, PBS lesson plans. So I tried to, you know, if it has a content like that, I try to add that kind of stuff too. So I hope that you'll take, when you go there, to share that with your teachers. You know, I mean, that's what it's there for, is to find it. And it's almost always when you go to lightbinders.com, almost always it's a featured binder because so many people are using it. And they bump you up in the list if people are using it. Whether it's useful or not depends on if people are logged in. I learned that. Like, it's useful. Why does it only have 9 usefuls? It's got almost 8,000 views, and I just started it. but it's because you have to be logged in. Is that 10 after?
Yes.
5.
We have to rethink our strategy a little bit to boy land. And, I'm being really generic about this whole thing, because these books that we just talked about, they're just good books. Girls will like them too. But in particular, they have things that boys will also like. But especially so many of us are women. I saw some of your faces when I was talking about the frog that birthed the babies out, and the bats that had the tongue down in its cage or whatever. We're just a little squeamish, some of us, or the horror is just not what we like, or sci-fi, we don't really like that too, we don't really read graphic novels, and so we don't buy that as much. So we have to be careful that we don't get in our own comfort zone and forget about who our customers are, and make sure you're getting things for them, and that there's balance, because sometimes we can just subconsciously do that. And if you go back and you look at your orders, you might see that all your characters are little white girls. Now, part of the problem with that is and if you got the new School Library Journal issue this month, the whole article, the whole issue is devoted to diversity. In a lot of cases, there's not much to get there. One of the sales reps had me do a Books for Boys talk with an African-American male focus back in February. And you know how many books I found last year that had an African-American in them as a character? 6. And that's not just good ones. That's almost it that I would, even think about buying. There's just not that many. But thinking about it as you're reading, you've got more to draw from than the new stuff. But I'm hoping that the new stuff will bring that in. Thinking about your lesson plans. If we said that boys are more likely to be to learn when they're involved, then do some more involved things that they can do. And then think about your marketing. There are some things that boys just navigate to. If you begin a camera tin or a bunch of fishing poles, or you do a sports display, boys are going to stop right there. Just like if you put Pink Princess stuff on the table, your little girls are going to stop right there, right? So think about that. Think about that with your marketing, and make sure you're getting other cultures and male people in there. Here's a book with male characters, Numbed. Maybe you read Punished. Did you read Punished? Punished was the book back in the early 2000s where they were running in the library, so they got punished, and they had to find all these parts of speech to be cured. In this one, they say math is stupid to a computer. So guess what? They can't do no math. They can't tell time. They can't add. They have a big math test coming, so they have to do all this different kind of math stuff in order to get the curse removed. In Greek and Roman mythology, of course, is another topic that boys like. This is a great series, The Olympians, a new one by George O'Connor on Poseidon. These are often a little more sophisticated in art and in content. So if you get these in the middle school, there might be something that you might not want 6th grade to have. Just saying. The new one, Aphrodite. Yeah, that might not be something. Go there. In 6th grade. GuidesReads.com. Great website. He's been working on it a little bit. This is John Sheska's literacy program for boys, and there he talks about if you want to set up a boys club, or what are some books that you might want to read. You might want to read resources. You can follow him on Twitter, and you might post that to your boys as well. They also now have a series of books that are short stories, so you don't have to read. Excuse me, you don't have to read the whole thing. Going back to what we said earlier about you don't have to read books. This one is science fiction, and there's one on sports, and there's one on humor. There's a generic one, so there are half a dozen titles out, and they're going to continue to come out. One of the things that I do is I look at it, and I see who's in there, what people wrote for it, and then I go look at the library catalog, and I see what do I have written by those same people. Maybe those would be books that I already have that I could bring in. that boys might like to read. For those little guys' graphic novels, they love those too. There is a company called Toon Books. And at Toon Books, they're publishing these beginning graphic novels for kids, but not only that. They are writing Common Core lessons. Oh, I'm in Texas. Y'all don't care about that. Y'all are so lucky. You just do your own thing. This Common Core stuff is driving the rest of the world bizongo. Of course, what you're doing has a lot of Common Core in it. You just don't have to have the same terminology. But anyway, but there are lesson plans. So you could use Otto's Backwards Day in your lessons. And let's see what's going here. So this is the Books for Boys website, for boys. Here are some of the authors, some of which we've talked about earlier. Some of the books have their own series. Here are some resources for you. There's the Guys Reads for Kids. When I come down here to the publishers, there's Toon Books. And under there, you can see the guides. Actually, they were there a long time before they suddenly decided to call them Common Core. Just so you know. But they're also Toon Readers. And a Toon Reader are all these books in a different language, and they read them to you. So it's like it's a free ebook. And so you can read it in a different language if you want to. So they have it in Spanish. They have a cartoon maker. They have taken some of these books and made them into complete videos. And so you just click on it and play, and off you go.
Little Mouse Gets Ready. The read-along Toon Book by Jeff Smith.
Little Mouse Gets Ready by Jeff Smith, with the voices of Jeff Smith as Little Mouse and Lee Stein as Mom. Little Mouse Gets Ready.
So that's a little bit about that. And then these are all the different levels of books that they have. One, a lot of them have won awards. Level 2, and they're up to third, fourth grade now. Let me show you Professor Garfield. Y'all know about Professor Garfield? So under the student sites, professorgarfield.org, we were talking about games and getting kids involved. There's this great graphic novel activity under Read. It's Reading Ring. If you have boys especially that like wrestling, what they do is they give you 3 Garfield comic strips and they break them up, and you have to put them in order.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Boys and girls, parents and folks, you and Eric Goes, and welcome to tonight's play. You versus Dr. Stratton. Oh, don't let this. Let's get it on.
We'll skip the intro. And then after we put the comic strip in order, we have to answer comprehension questions. So it says, I glued the top onto Garfield's birthday present so we can't peek. Right now I'm thinking some air holes would be nice. That should keep him thinking all weekend. It's hard to do it when you're under pressure. Now it's going to ask us 3 questions. Where is Garfield? It's in the box. John glued the top of the box. Why do you think he did this? He ran out of tape. He wanted it to look special for Garfield's birthday, and then Garfield would try to find out what was in the box. Find out. I'm going to just click the top one so you can see what it does. So this gave us a hint, and we get a second chance. What is a synonym for the word peak? Open, speak, look. You got it right, you got it round, we gotta do it again. So that was ProfessorGarfield.org, and it's in your resources under student sites. But it is a lot of fun, and it's not easy. The Port Chicago 50. This is Steve Schenken. Did you read Bomb? You know about Bomb? The race to create the H-bomb between Germany and the United States. So this one is written by the same guy. So does his research, does his homework, and it's history in a very readable style. It almost reads like you're reading a narrative. Well, it's narrative nonfiction. But the Port Chicago is not in Chicago. It's not in Illinois. I was really surprised. It's in San Francisco. And it's the story of 50 black Navy sailors who were court-martialed because they refused to go back to work loading bombs without any training. It blew up 2 ships and completely demolished the pier. And they said, we're not going back to that. We lived through it, we're not going back. And they said, you go back, we're court-martialed. And they weren't, and at that time, they could be killed. And so they weren't killed, they got put in jail and all this stuff happened. Then Eleanor Roosevelt got involved and I thought, yay, Eleanor Roosevelt will save the day. She did not. This is still an issue for these men. Yep, I was mad the whole time I read it. I'm still mad now I think about it. Prisoner B3087. This is based on a true story of a boy who was living in, did you read that?
I just got it and it's like one of my boys dropped off.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I was scared the whole time I read that thing because you're waiting for a shoe to drop because every chapter is the name of an internment camp, a concentration camp. And this poor boy is trying to survive all by himself, no adults, and he's going from camp to camp to camp. And it finally gets to Auschwitz and I thought, oh, here it is, the boy's not going to make it. Guys, I have to tell you, so you can relax a little when you're reading. I mean, it's a terrible thing he went through, but if you look him up, Jack Renner, you'll see that's his story. I mean, you couldn't tell a story if you weren't already still here. Haddix, she lives in Columbus. I went to a hockey game with her husband. I mean, she was at a meeting, and he was with a bunch of people, but it was kind of one of those small world kind of things, because I had just written about one of her books. But this is, I think it's book 6 maybe, of Missing, called Wrist, and the story of the Romanovs. I wasn't really sure how she's going to pull that off, because those people really are dead. We can't sneak them back. But I think she did a good job. 2.0 book reports. On page 6 in your handout, it talks about podcasts and bookies, book reviews. Now, you have Destiny, right? Can y'all put video or audio?
Yes.
You can. That's a great place to put that stuff because kids are, it's one thing to show them a book trailer that I found or that you found, but they're going to look at one that they made. And so what a lot of people are doing now, not only are they having kids make these book trailers, is they're putting QR codes on the book. And so when the kid goes home, or if he's got his device with him, he scans the back of the book and he can watch a book trailer of the book right here in his hand. So you might try something like that too. Or have them do the whole comic book thing. If they like comic books, let them draw. There is a fake book website, and it looks like just like Facebook, but it's fake. And so when kids do their biography reports, have them write a fake book page. If George Washington was on Facebook, who would be his friends? Who lived when he lived? What organizations would he belong to? What pages would he like? Think about that. It's a pretty fascinating kind of idea. And we talked about the PowerPoint pages earlier. Now, where can you find this stuff? You go to the website that says Web Resources for Teachers, and you go down to the bottom where it says Digital Resources. you'll see links to all that kind of stuff. So, for example, here are some book trailers. They give you some examples, or you can just use these.
This book is Sammy the Seal by Sid Hoff. It was feeding time at the zoo, and everyone was happy. Except one seal, Sammy. He wanted to see the city, so he asked the man to let him out, and he did. Sammy looked at everything, including workers and people eating. But he came upon a lion who didn't went to his school. Will the teacher accept him or not? Find out by reading the book, Sammy the Seal.
So it's just a very simple book trailer. It's made with Photo Story, which is I say it's so easy an adult can do it. It's also good for, your vacation trips and things like that. The Vokey is also down here. We don't have time to get into it too much, but I just want to give you some kind of ideas. So I've used my Vokey in more than one way. One as a way to invite them to come into an orientation, but I also was doing podcasts of the book trailers, of the book talks, and so, but it was pretty flawed, it's just an audio file, and I thought, oh, wait, what if I upload my book talk audio file into a Vokey? So there's my creepy librarian. Let's see what she says.
Here's my new Vokey. How do I sound? Am I creepy? Are you paying attention? Do you know I can see you everywhere?
I do know teachers who leave these things up on their board all day because, look, she is watching. And if kids are afraid, she's going to call them out. I know one teacher who she actually made some up in advance for when she was coming on, and she used kids' names. Like, Julie, you leave John alone when we go out to recess. Julie, how that happened? But when I edit my little Vokey, and this is free, you can record up to 60 seconds for free. But you can give it a voice by either calling it in. So if you have a phone in your lab or in your library, they can just call it in. You can type it. This is one of the most fun things, is because you type your text in and then you can change where you're from. You could be from France, or you could be Greek. And you could be a boy or a girl. Welcome to
Welcome to the library.
Now we have a little accent. And then there is where you can upload an audio file, and of course you can use your microphone that you have either on your computer or so if you go back and you look at this list, there are all kinds of things, from podcasts to comic book software and other digital tools that you might use. Oh, you mentioned screencasting. You know about screencasting? I'm going to guess some of you later do. But just in case you don't, how many times do you have, one of the problems we have with kids is that they ask us the same thing 50 times. And we could just put them in a box and put the tape down. But there are some things that if we made a video of, we wouldn't have to say it again, like this.
How do you find the blog for JLG? Click on News and Events. Scroll down on the right-hand side, click Shelf Life, and there you'll see the most recent post. If you're interested in something specific, you can come over to the right-hand side and find something that's like what you're looking for, say like classroom management. And there you see an article on Harry Wong, and here you see one on What's Your Signal? And there you will see how to buy the wand.
See? So I don't ever have to say that again. I made it on this little thing. And you don't have to download anything. You just start recording. It gives you a little box. You click play. You can save it to your computer. You can put it on the screencast channel if you're logged in. Or you can put it on the YouTube account. But there are lots and lots of ways you could use that. Rotten. This is a dog book. I was scared from your car, but everybody lives. It's about a boy who gets into trouble, and he's back home. His mom's gotten this new Rottweiler that's been abused, and it's how the two of them pretty much save each other. Saturday boy whose father is in the military, goes to the Middle East, he doesn't come home, which sadly happens. Scaly, spotted, feathered, and frilled. It's dinosaurs. What do dinosaurs look like, and how do we know? There are paleo artists who study the scientific evidence and then paint them. So a lot of them have gone back to drawings and paintings they've done in the past and redone it now that there's new scientific studies. Here's another scary series, The Screaming Staircase by Jonathan Stroud. It's kind of a steampunk kind of thing. They have cell phones, but they dress like they live in Dickens' time, you know, and nobody's got your normal kind of modern conveniences except for cell phones. Sea of Monsters, another book in the Percy and Olympian series. Second Impact. I almost hate to talk about football when I'm in Texas, like it could be a bad thing, but there's a lot of talk about second impact injuries. And this is a story of a boy who's had to sit out, and he kind of goes head to head with a girl who's a journalist at their high school, and what the two of them learn from it. C.V. Dig, a beginning reader about dogs and things that they dig up, including the ghost of a pirate. Ship Out of Luck, the second funniest book of last year. Neil Schusterman, hilarious. The Schwa stories, and I read this whole series backwards, and it was fun. But it was hilarious about this boy who goes on a cruise, and the immigration trouble he gets into while he's doing it. Take Me Out to the Yaku, a great comparison contrast picture book about what it's like to go to a baseball game in Japan and what it's like to go, China, and what it's like to go to one here. That is not a good idea. Melodramatic tale of, I guess we could say it's a fable, because a lesson could be learned. Toilet and how it works. Of course, boys like to know about toilets and things that work, and it's a beginning reader by Macaulay. Twerk, another bully book where a guy did a really bad thing. And we're not real sure what it is at the beginning. It's a story of how he learns what he should have done and how he came to that point. The Waffler, a boy cannot make a decision. You probably have kids that you know. It makes me crazy. I'm standing there saying, how about this one? How about this one? How about this one? And then they pick up something they have no intention to read that you got to start next week. And that's what happens to this boy. He cannot decide. What We Found in the Sofa and How It Saved the World. Hilarious. Hilarious. It's not by Henry Clark. It's also funny. Go to Henry's website. This book is in the JLG Book Talks to Go Light Binder. His website's hilarious. It's a book about time travel and this sofa, which actually has superpowers. They find it by the bus stop one day. Lemony Snicket, new series. When did you see her last? Is this newest one, and there's another one coming out in the fall. When the Beat Was Born, about the history of hip hop. The third funniest book, Zombie Baseball Beatdown. Now, where's our high school people? You know Paolo Bacigalupi, thank you. You can also hear his name pronounced on teachabooks.net. I just got hung up in the middle of it, but yeah. So you remember what he wrote? He wrote that dystopian steampunk shipbreakers. Really creepy YA novel. And then this came across my desk and I went, whoa, this is very different. It's about a zombie cow breakout at a meatpacking plant. And the baseball team that they're the only ones sane left to try to stop the whole thing. It's one of those, who writes this? You say the whole time you're reading the book. So, Challenging our boys, that's another thing we said, raise our expectations by giving them more than one reading level, expecting them to do well, allowing them to grow. And a great place to allow them to grow and think is Wonderopolis. If you aren't using this in your library work, check it out. It's got questions of the day and a short paragraph for where they can find the answers. When you hover over certain words, it gives you the definitions. There's always a video. Sometimes there's a test. There's vocabulary. If this didn't answer all your questions, here's another article you might read. Brilliant, and it's free. Wonderopolis. So I also think we plan for success. We're out of time, so I'm going to flip through that. But go back and read that thing about Harry Wong that you saw online. One of the things, and I'll just say this really quickly, is that boys do well if they know where the finish line is. So if they know what the rules are, and if they're the same, procedures are the same every time they come in, then they'll do that. But if they don't know, are you going to make them push my chair in this time or not, then they're probably not going to do it. So you have to be consistent. That's on you, not on them. And that's what Harry says. So we have talked about strategies and techniques. We talked about getting men in. We looked at some really good books. If you want more, like I said, I do have a book out now. It has these and some other strategies in it. I am working on a new one. Oftentimes on the JLG website, I do the blog, and so sometimes I'll write about them, ideas on the blog post, but also in the Book Talks to Go column, the light binder, and then don't forget Pinterest, as I find things on the Pinterest board. And so if you want to follow JLG, you just go into Pinterest and you look for Junior Library Guild, and then look for pinners, not boards, not pins, but pinners. And then you'll find me, Junior Library Guild, because that's what I do. Pin for a living. And so that's it. If you need anything about your subscription, you can contact Deb at dgoble@Junior Library Guild. If you need me, I'm D4 at Junior Library Guild. And I thank you for having me. You're welcome. The other thing, oh shoot, I didn't tell you. I know I forget something. I have a new thing that I do. It's called the post-workshop post. So I know there will be things I think of while I'm sitting at the airport for the next 5 hours, waiting to go home, that I didn't tell you that I should have, but one of them I'm remembering right now. So I'm going to show you. Because you got the 2012 list, but if you go to Light Binders, there is a Books for Boys Light Binder that I just started. Because I have a BER workshop that I used to do, and I've retired semi from BER, but I'm like, I did all that work, I'm putting it up. So I'm going to be adding to this and putting different things in these same categories. But under choice and variety of materials, I'm also going to post my 2014 list and the complete 2013 list. So if you go back, maybe by tonight, because I'll be sitting in the Admiral's Club, those lists will be there. So I hope that'll help you. And I thank Kathy for herding us together.
Thank you for coming.
You're welcome.
And y'all can take a break till around 2:45, and then we'll get back together. You guys go to the restroom, get cookies.
And those
Julie, thank you for